Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 13th Annual Public Meeting of Canada's International Development Research Centre. Bienvenue and bonjour à tous et bienvenue.
Welcome to this 13th Annual Public Meeting of the International Development Research Centre. My name is Margaret Biggs, and I'm Chair of the Board of Governors. It is my pleasure to declare this session open.
Chairperson of IDRC's Board of Governors, and it is my real pleasure to call this meeting to order. We are really grateful to see a diverse virtual audience from across Canada and around the world, including from the Government of Canada, the diplomatic community, civil society, the research community, grantees and partners, among many others. Thank you all for joining us for this year's annual public meeting, and welcome. First, I have some housekeeping duties. The event is being recorded for future use. Cette assemblée se déroule.
This meeting will be conducted in both of Canada's official languages, English and French. Interpretation is available in English, French, and Spanish, based on the language you selected upon entering the event.
Both of Canada's official languages, English and French. Interpretation is available in English, French, and Spanish, based on the language you selected upon entering the event. If you want to change the language at any time, you can do so by clicking on the language button on your screen. Later, there will be a Q&A session. And so to submit a question or comment, we're going to use Slido. So simply click on the Slido icon on the navigation bar of the webcast player. And this will open a new window on your screen, and just follow the instructions and type your question. If at any moment you should have any technical difficulties, click on the question mark icon where you can describe your issue and you will receive immediate assistance via email. So we have an engaging hour ahead of us, including presentations outlining 3 IDRC-supported initiatives that demonstrate the early progress in the implementation of IDRC's new Strategy 2030. Combating climate change and inequalities is at the heart of IDRC's new Strategy 2030. Increasingly severe climate change impacts are threatening to undo hard-won development gains and undermine progress. And persistent inequality, whether it's based on gender, race, sexuality, economic status, or otherwise, prevent people from moving out of poverty and reaching their full potential. These are the main drivers behind our work and guide our vision towards a more sustainable and inclusive world. Through Strategy 2030, IDRC will continue to advance its unique mandate to invest in applied research and innovation by researchers in developing countries and ensure the perspectives, experience, and expertise of low and middle income countries inform global decision-making. At this moment, I'd just like to recognize my fellow governors on the Board of Governors, many of whom are with us today virtually. IDRC's work over the past year would not have been possible without your commitment and leadership, and IDRC benefits greatly from your counsel. It's an honor to serve alongside you on the board, so thank you very much. Permettez-moi maintenant de passer la parole au...
Please allow me now to give the floor to the President of the IDRC, Jean Lebel, who will present a summary of the past year.
Of IDRC, Jean Lebel. And Jean's going to reflect on the past year and introduce our presentations. Jean, over to you.
I win the t-shirt. You are on mute for this year, annual public meeting. My apologies. Thank you very much. Merci, Margaret. It's a pleasure to be here in this virtual format. Let me acknowledge also all our distinguished guests, and in particular, our governors that have been providing strategic guidance with our chair throughout the year. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Me complace de que por primera vez estemos ofreciendo traducción simultánea en español Bienvenidos a todos los asistentes a través del canal de traducción al español. So if I haven't done too much of a massacre of Spanish, I said that I am excited that for the first time we are offering simultaneous translation in Spanish. Bienvenue à tous et toutes qui sont sur notre...
Welcome to all who are on the Spanish channel.
As Margaret mentioned, this year we mark the first year under our new Strategy 2030. Strategy 2030 establishes IDRC's vision for a more inclusive and sustainable world. Climate change and combating inequalities are both the greatest challenges we face and the biggest hurdles to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. La Stratégie 2030.
Our Strategy 2030 includes three basic objectives. The first one is to continue to invest in research and innovation, high-quality research and innovation in developing countries. These investments aim at producing and calibrate high-quality research so that the research organizations and their partners can rise to their own challenges and to those of world development. The second objective consists in sharing knowledge so that they be more used and implemented. Our strategy focuses on collaboration with the beneficiaries of grants and other key partners, key stakeholders, to increase the use and the influence of research supported by IDRC. The investments of IDRC in knowledge sharing are bearing fruit already, as one of the examples we will show you later will show. Finally, the third objective is to mobilizing impactful alliances. We are working hard to cooperate with the largest possible number of actors to achieve greater impact. Thanks to funding partnerships, we are increasing resources available for the world for research and innovation in development. This allows us to promote the implementation of or application of research in the context of better policies, better practices, better uses to create broad felt impact. Partnerships and funding and partnerships with our fund recipients based on knowledge and substance.
Today, three IDRC colleagues who in just a moment will share programming examples that demonstrate impact under each of the three core objectives that I just highlighted: investing in high-quality research, sharing knowledge, and mobilizing alliances. So let's now hear from our colleagues who are here to talk about the progress we made in a very initial year of our Strategy 2030, and for each of them to give us a taste of what has been accomplished on each of those objectives. First presentation, we will learn about an example of progress under our investment in high quality research and innovation in developing country and having an impact. And specifically, how a collaborative initiative is using artificial intelligence to support an effective COVID-19 response in Africa, South Africa in particular. And to tell us about this project, I'd like to introduce my good friend and colleague, Cathy Clancy. Cathy is a program officer with the Artificial Intelligence for Development Initiative under our IDRC Education and Science program. Cathy, over to you.
Hello, thanks so much, Jean. Today, I'm really excited to share this example from South Africa. A savvy research team has leveraged global expertise to use AI research to understand the spread of COVID-19 and to respond quickly to the waves of the disease. Here's what that research looks like in action. The COVID monitoring dashboard you see on the slide provides official data for Gauteng province, the most populous province of South Africa. The dashboard has two main purposes. First, it acts as a public information tool, which is so important to combat misinformation surrounding COVID-19, as reliable information was hard to find early in the pandemic. It shares near real-time information on hospitalization rates, new infections, and mortalities. This helps the public understand where South Africa is at in the pandemic and what public health measures are needed at any given time. News media are making use of it. It is featured frequently on radio and on TV, as is the team, including one of the lead researchers who created it, Dr. Bruce Mulatto, who's a member of the Premier's Advisory Council. And more than 20,000 people access the dashboard every day. The project helps meet the demand for reliable, scientifically verified public health data. It is also a policy tool. The data gathered by the research team for the dashboard is a key input for AI modeling efforts that help to predict what public health responses might be most effective. The Premier's office and the political task force then use those models to inform their decision-making on everything from lockdowns and reopenings to vaccine distributions. Another exciting development is that the team uses this information to help ensure public health measures are more equitable for vulnerable populations who might be disproportionately affected by those measures. Here's another recent and relevant example of how this research is driving impact. The analytics and modeling provided by this team are playing an important role in understanding the impact of the new Omicron variant, recently discovered by South African researchers. The multidisciplinary team is working hard to analyze key factors such as hospitalizations and mortalities, as well as mobility in Gauteng province to understand the impact and spread of the variant across South Africa. The research has informed rapid policy response, such as the South African president's recent call for mandatory vaccinations. While it is still early days in terms of understanding the nature and implications of the variant, the kind of research conducted by the team will play an important part of the ongoing response. I want to tell you a bit more about the people behind this amazing work. The project is being led by the Africa-Canada Artificial Intelligence and Data Innovation Consortium, which is based at York University here in Canada. They are working closely with the Wits University in Africa, as well as a variety of other universities across the continent. How the teams are set up is helping drive policy uptake. They are led by experts already embedded in their country's COVID task forces and who adapt their AI models and dashboards to produce contextualized insights. Building on the success of the South African dashboard and modeling, we can look forward to more stories of how the consortia is influencing public health responses. The 9-country teams across Africa are showing that AI is not just a fad, but an asset for pandemic surveillance and monitoring in the future. This work is thanks to the support of multiple actors. Thank you, Jean. Over to you.
I have 2 t-shirts, or the t-shirt and the jacket. Thank you. My apologies. Thank you, Katie. I got carried away because it's such a beautiful example, insightful presentation on how, our strategy 2030 with its objectives and the drive that is coming from all our programming and all the institution makes a clear, impact. Who would have thought that an early investment in artificial intelligence, then doubled by, our investment in COVID-related research in the first week of the pandemic, would turn into a tool that has now helped the South African to raise the flag about the Omicron variant and, let the world know this is a real story of impact of research in real time, and where investment in research produce insightful awareness, but also decision-making. Thank you very much, Katie. And we're going to go now to Francine Sinzin-Caillot. J'aimerais vous la présenter. Francine va nous parler d'un exemple.
I would like to introduce her. She will talk to us about an example of process in connection to our second objective, i.e. knowledge sharing for better use and better implementation and application. Francine took part in the development of the 2030 strategy. She is a program officer, and she focuses on the application of knowledge in the context of the health program of IDRC. She will talk to us about the health of mothers and infants in Africa. Francine, the floor is yours. Thank you, Jean. And good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to talk to you about the second objective of Strategy 2030, which is knowledge sharing to influence the increased adoption and use of evidence. We recognize that the Centre can play an important role in influencing policies and programs to improve the lives of people in need. Thus, positioning the research we fund for use by targeted shareholders helps guide interventions to address development challenges. To illustrate this objective, I will highlight here, as an example, a project funded under the Innovation for Africa's Maternal and Child Health Initiative and implemented in northern Nigeria, West Africa. Nigeria has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the world, and the government has made reducing maternal and child mortality a national priority. One of the key strategies to reduce maternal mortality is to ensure that all women receive prenatal care as recommended by the World Health Organization. However, health facilities in resource-poor areas, such as the Bauchi state in northern Nigeria, are under-equipped, and recommended antenatal care services are not always accessible, those recommended by the WHO. From the project's inception, the research team worked closely with community and government stakeholders to test and implement a universal home visiting program to reduce maternal mortality. That's the objective of the program, by addressing factors including pregnancy workload, domestic violence, and signs of pregnancy complications. These home visits were conducted over a 4-year period and targeted more than 36,000 households, approximately 28,000 pregnant women and their spouses. The project results showed that these visits reduce complications during pregnancy considerably and also after delivery, as well as infant mortality. As a result of the impact of this project and regular consultations between the research team and policymakers, the Bauchi state government adopted the home visiting program by establishing a home visiting unit under the Ministry of Health. The statewide rollout of this program to 20 zones requires trained staff. Thus, the research team, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and other key stakeholders, developed a training curriculum that is being delivered by 2 colleagues in Bauchi. Thus, this scale-up of the program is improving maternal and child health outcomes. In addition, the home visits provided real-time data for local health authorities to plan for improved services. For example, pregnant women in the intervention areas began requesting blood pressure checks and urine tests when they visited the health centers. In addition, knowledge sharing from this project within the community changed gender norms and family practices, which had a positive impact on the lives of women and children. So this project is a good example of how quality research responding to an important local issue can have an impact, a significant impact on people's lives. Thank you very much, and back to you, Jean. And I will not win a third T-shirt. I unmuted my microphone successfully. Thank you very much, Francine. A very strong illustration from Francine on how research is not just research that allows for publications or decision-making on policies, but changes practices because health systems changed. Another dimension that Francine did not mention, but which I would like to highlight because I was at the heart of its development, is the ISMEA program that Francine mentioned. Was born in a program that World Affairs or the Foreign Affairs Department funded before this one. And the idea was to look at programs with the highest impact and fewest resources. And this program originated from actually a Tanzanian program, Tanzania Health Program. And that program had been developed in 1997 when I first joined IDIC 25 years ago. Knowledge sharing is done over an implicitly lengthy period, which doesn't mean that nothing is occurring. Learning from one project to another, from one actor to another, allows for this broad-based knowledge sharing, which influences political actors, populations, but grantors and research policy developers that we are. Francine, that was an excellent example. Thank you very much. And now,
for this final presentation of an example of our work, one that concentrates on our third fundamental core objective in the Strategy 2030. How do we mobilize alliance for creating greater impact? If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. So Bruce Curry-Elder is with us. Good morning, Bruce. He is the Climate Resilience Program Leader under IDRC Climate Resilient Food System Program. And he will present us, I think, a very interesting, alliance that has been generated in the vein of the Glasgow Conference. Bruce, up to you.
Merci, Jean. As noted by Margaret and yourself, addressing climate change and inequality is essential to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and beyond. The Climate Adaptation and Resilience, or CLARE partnership, supports the development of actionable solutions in communities most vulnerable to climate change and extreme weather events. CLARE enables inclusive, sustainable response to the climate crisis, including the disproportionate effects for women, girls, and marginalized communities. CLARE advances the core objective of Strategy 2030 to mobilize alliances for impact. Co-funded by the United Kingdom's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, the partnership forms a cornerstone of the Adaptation Research Alliance, launched at the recent COP26 climate conference in Glasgow. The Alliance is a coalition now of over 90 organizations, some of which you see on the screen, to increase the global investment in action-oriented research innovation at the scale and urgency demanded by the science. IDRC has over 15 years of experience fostering collaboration on climate adaptation, most recently rallying more than 40 organizations across 17 countries to build resilience in climate-sensitive hotspots. This work contributed novel insights to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, special report, identifying what an extra half degree of global warming means in specific locations. In the mountains of South Asia, this is the difference between losing 1/2 rather than 1/3 of the glacier ice mass that people rely on for fresh water. In Namibia, it means doubling the number of days of extreme heat with consequences for food production and human health. Equipped with such findings, university researcher Margaret Angula became a trusted advisor to her minister, both at the UN climate negotiations and pursuing climate change at home. Moving forward, the new CLARE partnership aims to maximize uptake of existing knowledge by policymakers and practitioners, drive new knowledge and enable capacity needed for climate resilient development, and support inclusive, practical action and overcome barriers to adaptation. The partnership will improve our understanding of the risks associated with climate, improve early action to reduce impacts of climate variability, and inform development in a changing climate. We anticipate funding competitions in the new year will set the stage to benefit at least 5 million people directly around the world. IDRC is responsible for ensuring CLARE becomes more than the sum of individual projects. And we intend to do so by fostering learning and collaboration for uptake of evidence into decision-making and implementation, enabling capacity among practitioners, communities, and private sector to do and use research for action, and supporting equitable and diverse partnerships led by people and teams based in the Global South. This matters. We know that billions of dollars are being mobilized now for international climate finance, and globally our societies are investing trillions in their future. By addressing the urgent need for action now and anticipating future needs, Claire and IDRC are poised to catalyze action and inform those investments. This is how IDRC is mobilizing an alliance for impact, and we look forward to delivering on this potential. Back to you, Jean.
Thank you very much, Bruce. And again, my microphone is on. It's a remarkable example, this CLARE partnership, of both how we are mobilizing alliances for impact and how IDRC is contributor to efforts by our country, Canada, and the UK to build climate resilience and better adapt to a global climate that is rapidly changing. And again, here, when we talk to research, it's a research that is anchored in the practice and the knowledge that we started developing in 2005 on adaptation. At a time where nobody was talking about adaptation, what is the human response to the climate change? Everyone was concentrating on the mitigation and how to curb down the greenhouse gas emission. Well, IDRC made, quite an effort and took quite a risk to say, let's leave to the others that are looking at curbing the greenhouse gas emission, their role and function. And let's look into what countries that are affected and suffering directly from climate change without contributing much to the emission can do in order to support and sustain a better future. And today's, those two aspects, mitigation and adaptation, are the two faces of the same coin where research is more than ever needed, and the partnership with our colleagues in the UK and the alliance with the numbers of actors you've seen on screen is a fantastic illustration that complex issue can be tackled. And IDRC is quite proud for Canada to be part of this. So, merci beaucoup à nos à mes trois collègues.
So thank you very much to my three colleagues for having shown the progress realized within our 2030 strategy during its very first year. These examples show us that we are on the right path. And although these are the first few steps of its implementation, these examples also show how the research supported by Canada through IDRC creates significant changes and sustainable changes for those who need it most. This research also, as you could see it, addresses urgent, immediate crisis and contributes to achieving national and even world objectives, namely the objectives of sustainable development. Everything takes us back there. Thanks to the investments in research from the IDRC in southern countries in the world south, thanks to knowledge originating from this research, and thanks to our reinforcement of mobilization of alliances, we support these most vulnerable countries. And we contribute to making sure that people most affected by world crisis allow us to learn in the interest of everyone, including Canadians.
There remains much work to do, but we are encouraged by this first year and the performance of IDRC through a period of pandemic turmoil. For that, we have IDRC's Board of Governors and Margaret as our chair. We have our management team, but more important than everything else, we have our employees to thank for their resilience, leadership, and innovation. You've seen today 3 examples of the hard work of our colleagues in the program that are working as one IDRC with all the other functions in the center to deliver on our mandate. A mandate still true 51 years after the inauguration of the center, help researcher and institution in the developing world to have the tools, the means, through science, to find solutions that fit their context, their aspiration, and create that way a world that is definitively more sustainable, more inclusive, and where we can hope for prosperity to continue, prosperity that makes a difference in the life and livelihood of population, the most vulnerable, and many others. I thank you very much for your attention. I thank Katie, Francine, and Bruce for the delivery of a fantastic story. And Margaret, I'm passing back the microphone to you, and I'm going to put myself on mute now. Go ahead, Margaret.
Thank you very much, Jean, and thank you, merci beaucoup, Jean. And thank you to Katie, Francine, and Bruce for sharing such compelling examples of IDRC's impact under the first year of Strategy 2030. We've had examples, couldn't be more compelling and timely around COVID, and pandemic preparedness and monitoring, issues around climate mitigation, which is really at the frontier of what's happening in the world. And then, of course, the issues around maternal and child health and the unequal outcomes there, and just pivotal work that IDRC is doing. So now it's your turn here, those of you who are attending our public meeting. It's to all of you watching from around the world. We're here, the team is here to answer any questions you may have. Et Jean et moi sommes à l'écoute de vos questions.
Jean and I are here to hear your questions, and you can also put questions to the three presenters on the work that they just told you about.
Presenters for questions about the work that they just explained and outlined for you. So we're happy to answer your questions. You can ask your question in English, Spanish, or French. Interpretation is available. Please ask your question by clicking on the Slido icon on the navigation bar of the webcast player. And clicking it will open a new window on your screen where you can type your questions. And we're going to start with the questions that are already there. We're going to have our colleague, Patricia Corrigan, is going to read them out as they appear. Sur ce, nous commencerons par les questions qui ont été soumises jusqu'à présent. So with that,
so we will start with the questions already submitted.
Listening to and answering your questions.
Thank you, Margaret. In order to start the discussion while we wait for questions to be posed via Slido, I will invite Jean to expand further on IDRC's work with respect to pandemic-related research. Jean, comment les recherches que le CRDI mène depuis la pandémie?
Jean, how has the research done by IDRC since the beginning of the pandemic has contributed to his fight? Thank you, Trish. Please don't be shy and go ahead and submit your questions. IDRC, as early as April 2020, as I mentioned, invested $55 million in research on the pandemic. A few goals of research. The first one, assist Canadian bodies to create a rapid response fund given the pandemic and the situation in the world, and see how we could make a small contribution, which allowed us to look at the entire aspect of health of humans, their interactions, health of animals as well. A second very important effort focused on the issues relating to rebuilding after the pandemic. You will recall in April 2020, no one believed that the situation would last for so long, except a few people who did not speak up too loudly to avoid generating too many fears. So we called upon think tanks, we called upon independent institutions that do independent research and that respond to questions submitted by countries or submit answers with regard to questions concerning the public good. And in this case, it was how to rebuild after the pandemic. More than 20 institutions in Africa and Asia are looking at what answers should come from public actors on this growth, so that after the pandemic, so that it can be inclusive?
Local research capacity. So, you know, among other things, South Africa with the National Research Foundation, you know, we partnered together in order to provide seed funding for homegrown research that could provide solution to local population. You know, I'm always using this, you know, postdoctoral student in Nigeria that developed, you know, face shield, personal protective equipment from 3D printing at the time where the world was in short supply of personal protective equipment. But through this, also what Katie just illustrated with the dashboard in Hang Teng province, the artificial intelligence in Africa, we have been at the forefront of investment with researchers and institutions that know how to do things. And that through a collaborative effort, it's not charity. It's building, you know, the quadrants of factors that are needed in society in order to help transport them and make the world better. It's a big ambition, but the center has done this for 52 years. And when the pandemic hit, we had all this knowledge that we could use in order to respond into a crisis situation, but through a sound approach and a long-term approach, because those investments will still give fruits for the years to come. So that's, in a nutshell, you know, what I could answer to your question, Trish. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Jean. And we're starting to receive some questions from our audience. First question posed is for Jean and Margaret. What are you most excited about for IDRC and its work in 2022?
Do you want me to go first, Jean? Well, what a fantastic question. I think I'm most excited about, well, all of the Strategy 2030, because I think it is so well positioned for what IDRC is uniquely capable of achieving, which is research for development. I think as Bruce said, it's about doing research, but it's about using research and research for impact. And IDRC has always been in this space, but I think with the new strategy and the new ideas, it's positioned to take that even further. So that's exciting. I also think the work on the 3 areas that we have here today, there's 5 program areas in the new strategy. You've heard about sort of examples coming out of 3 of them. I think it's fair to say that the work around climate adaptation really, and Bruce may not agree, but I think maybe finally was driven home at COP26, and that IDRC is so well positioned with FCDO in the United Kingdom to really galvanize an alliance of actors and researchers and doers to really make a difference on climate adaptation, which we know is going to hit the developing countries and communities hardest, and it's already happened. So I think that could be hopefully a major breakthrough, and IDRC is at front and center of that effort. And I think we'll just go from strength to strength. I could go on about many other things that I'm really excited about, but I'll stop there. Jean, over to you. What would you pick?
Oh, you know what I'm excited about? You know, I'm excited about when I hear stories like the one that we heard today. Those were only 3 illustrations. I think I'm excited about, you know, the strategy that we have been working on and that, you know, everyone has engaged into. And I'm excited in implementing this, which means, you know, adjustment, you know, on how we do business, adjustment on how we are making our decision making. This is all exciting. But the most important part is that this should make IDRC even more of a vibrant institution for the future. When we look at the knowledge sharing aspect that Francine illustrated, there's a whole infrastructure that we are building in order to support this where everyone is contributing. So this is fairly internal stuff, but it's exciting because it gives the opportunity to deliver for the country. And delivering for the country has been at the heart of our ambition. IDRC is a crown corporation. We're there to support and help, you know, the Canadian government to implement its, international policy. And when I look at the Feminist International Assistance Policy of the Global Affair Canada, and when I look, the Frontier Research Fund from the Granting Council, when I look at the involvement of Environment and Climate Change Canada, I am excited because Canada can play a role that makes it punch way above its weight. And IDRC is a small player, but it's a player that has a niche, and that's a player that can make a great contribution and also great impact. So that's what drives me to work with our program, with our people, with an organization here in Ottawa and 5 regional offices that is devoted to make research happen and bring solutions that are built up by our recipient and the institution they are hosted within.
Thank you, Jean. For the next question, COVID-19 tested the agility and flexibility of IDRC's funding modalities and processes, given the urgency to get funding out to the ground. What's been learned from this?
Well, I think that the first thing that we have to acknowledge is how fantastic our staff base has been, because this has not been throwing money out the window. This has been building program in record time as other, in Ottawa has built program, for the resilience of Canadian. We built program for the advancements of science and development around pandemic. And for that, we needed a strategy. It was the first test of our strategy. The strategy 2030 was approved a couple of weeks before. And with the help of the board, I remember very well, we had a conversation in March and we said, okay, let's move. And, we put the obstacle aside and we move, into a new era that we're still living through now. We're talking, on the cyberspace. So the learning for an organization that has said throughout its life that we were agile and nimble was reinforced by the pandemic. We became even more agile and nimble. And we need to sustain that and we need to adapt to it. And the world is changing, we are changing, but our main mandate and our strategy are there to guide us. So we haven't lost our north. We stick to our mandate and we follow the guidance, the strategic guidance from the board and of our staff. So that's a big learning for me. Count on an institution when comes crisis, and count on the strength of its staff and of its history and the guidance you have from your board and the support from government.
Patricia, if I could just jump in on that point, just to underscore one thing that Jean mentioned, because other shocks may also come our way, not just IDRC, but the whole world and all of Canada. I think, as Jean mentioned, the speed and the rapidity at which IDRC was able to pivot, take stock of where the issues were, how they could respond. I mean, that's a credit to and tremendous work on the part of the team and staff, but also that they're on the ground. They can respond very quickly to, not just in the ivory tower, but they got their hands on the issues as they're emerging. And that's not something you build overnight. It's something that is in your institutional DNA and culture. And I think that I think is, as Jean said, is something that we really want to continue to nurture at IDRC. And if I don't have a chance elsewhere in this meeting, just to thank IDRC staff around the world, and because it's been a tremendously challenging environment for all organizations in Canada and everywhere around the world. So we're not unique, but IDRC has been able to rise to the occasion, maintain their programs, pivot, and launch into new areas that are not going to go away. The challenges around climate change and inequality are not going away while we cope with the pandemic. So again, it's just a shout out, if I can, to all of IDRC's team and also their partners around the world, because this has been a tremendously challenging environment. And I do believe that IDRC's staff and management have risen to the challenge.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Margaret. And let's not forget our recipient, because one of the characteristics of the center is that through this pandemic and still, we're keeping contact even more regularly than we used to be when we were field visiting. But, through almost monthly meeting with the recipient, there's this dialogue that is engaged, because researchers are also suffering in the field. It's difficult. They are in country where it's difficult. So, this genuine interaction makes a world of difference when it comes time to pursue the mandate. Back to you, Trish.
Thank you very much, Jean. Thank you, Margaret. Our next question is, how does IDRC balance funding research on long-term issues like climate change with urgent issues like the pandemic?
Well, on that one, that's, a very good question. IDRC, maintain about 15% of its budget on a yearly basis to look at things that are on the radar of nobody. Things that we are anticipating might become an issue, or anticipating that there's something to look into. This is, the kind of R&D funds that any good corporation keep. Let's do the business that we have to do with our funding, the majority of our funding. But let's keep an eye on these things that, might be coming up. I remember a few years ago, that's how we started our funding of research on climate adaptation. We simply put $1 million aside, and we tasked one of our staff and a small team, what can we gain in learning about adaptation research? And I think, Bruce, you were part of this at the time. And in other instances, it was about the interaction between human and the environment. At a time where everyone was saying, what are you doing at IDRC? Look, the pandemic's origins from animals. And we have one of the most vibrant programs on livestock vaccine in order to prevent, dissemination of herds, but also transfer of diseases to human. So the balance in, exploratory research and, the core of our activity is always a delicate balance. And the board is there to guide us also. But our expert staff are there to guide us. We cannot embrace everything. But our model gives us the opportunity to take risks. And yes, sometimes we succeed over time, and sometimes we fail. But that's the nature of research. If we knew what was the outcome to be, it would not be research. It would be simply intervention. So in research, you need to, balance your risk. You need to stay steady when things are maturing, like climate change now, that is a mainstay, but you need to take risks. Artificial intelligence came also to mind. A few years ago, we were investing in artificial intelligence network in Africa at a time where many actors were saying, is there capacity? Of course there are capacity. So let's bring them to the table and have them, speaking for what they know, what they have done, and how they can help us to understand also things like a new variant, Omicron.
Thank you, Jean. Our next question is, are you thinking about supporting research on telework or remote work, a modality that was at its peak during the pandemic?
Ça, c'est une bonne question, Margaret.
That's a very good question.
We are all learning and doing right now. But last week I was in Montreal with a friend, and she was telling me, Jean, this is going to become such a field of work, in some domain. But Margaret, what's your perspective here?
Well, maybe two points. First of all, obviously IDRC has had its own experience and learning experience around remote working, and again, around the world and regional offices as well. I'll leave that aside because it's not about the organization and its operations. Jean's best placed to talk about the programmatic implications, but I can say that, and Jean will amplify on this, I mean, the issues around that we're seeing now, because some of them are not going to go away, are around distance learning, remote learning, I think will definitely be integrated into the program that IDRC, the big program that IDRC has on education and the partnership, the Global Partnership on Education, where IDRC is a key player, and clearly understanding there what the implications are for learning outcomes for different demographics, or different, our boys and girls equally able, who's actually going to be benefiting or perhaps not able to participate in the same way. So there's issues there. And I think there's also issues around the other program, which is around sustainable and inclusive growth, where there's a particular focus around women and youth and how they can participate and be empowered to participate in the economy, including in areas related to sustainable growth. And I think, again, these are issues, going back to the earlier question, these are not, IDRC doesn't chase every little rabbit down every little hole and, follow the puck all over the rink. That's a Canadian metaphor. But there are some things that are actually making tectonic shifts in the way in which economies work and the way in which organizations work. And I think the issues around the digital economy and how people are going to work in the future, it's not going to go away. So this is not flavor of the month. And I think it is going to be incorporated into a number of the areas of IDRC's programming. And of course, you could get into Francine's area as well around global health. And there's a lot of issues there. So I am not the expert. I'm going to turn it back to Jean.
Yes, thanks, Margaret. You're not an expert, but you are extremely savvy and well aware of the challenge that lies ahead. I think the work environment has been revolutionized prior to the pandemics with the development of new tools. I recall, and it's still present, the work that we're doing with refugees community and providing them with tools in order to get educated. Because, refugees needs to be going to schooling system in harsh and difficult condition. We did this in Jordan and Lebanon, I recall. But this effort that we have on education has crystallized really with the support of the Global Partnership on Education, which brings 64 countries together, where Canada is playing a very important role, and where, the partnership has granted IDRC with resources, what we call the KICS platform, the knowledge exchange platform, to gather, solution about education and what work, what does not work, and what can be applied globally. And this, transformed the life of not only the student, it transformed the life of the professor. And that's a segment, of workplace that is impacted by the pandemic. We don't have to elaborate on this. But how research, technology, social dimension are coming along through this KICS platform is remarkable. Katie is in this group. It's an engagement that we took. It's over, I think, $100 million over a 5-year period. And it has shown that in pandemics, we cannot put our arms down. The first and most impacted after the hill, and the one that unfortunately passed away, are the children in school. And then all workers that lost their job. And with the new economy, the skill development will become more and more prominent. We had program, for example, in Senegal, where we are contributing to training, engineer, and solar development. This is a new economy that is arising. And IDRC, I think, is well placed and at the forefront with a number of its program that you mentioned, Margaret, to make a difference. Back to you, Trish.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Margaret. The next question. Lately, we have seen African researchers on the news here in Canada. What is IDRC doing to support researchers from developing countries to communicate their research?
Give them the podium. I had a former colleague that was saying IDRC helped to build the platform. Researchers are delivering the keynotes. On aide à construire, à renforcer les capacités.
We help building capacity, and we've been doing that for 52 years. These people can speak up, can take the floor, tell their stories, and show how changes were made thanks to their research. whether it's at the Canadian Conference on Scientific Policies recently, or at the America's International Economic Forum, the International Economic Center in Montreal. There's several fora in Canada where we bring in actors and we give them the floor.
Last week, we had a webinar from Africa on the infodemic, disinformation crisis during the pandemic time and what to do about it. And researchers that are doing work, but work that has an impact, were, testifying to the world. Look, this is part of the tools that exist. And I'm sure some of our researchers here in Canada or elsewhere pick up on this, brings a new light, and you'll try to solve the problem. Beauty of research. You see, I talk with passion about research. Having been 25 years at the center, I'm still motivated on a daily basis because these stories make, more than an anecdote. They make, a case for ongoing support through research for people to find solution and make the world, much better than what it is. And throughout history, we've seen it, and I hope it will continue.
That's great, Jean. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for further questions, so I will turn back to yourself and Margaret for their closing remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Patricia. And I just want to take the audience for a very good question. Merci beaucoup. Muchísimas gracias para las preguntas. I'm going to simply pass it back to Margaret. But before I give you the mic, let me thank again Bruce, Francine, Katie, and all the teams behind, whether they are in program, in resources, in strategy, in our regional offices, in the IT. I'm forgetting one group, I'm forgetting nobody. All of IDRC, you are doing a fantastic job. Thanks for testifying to us about the mandate, the mission, and securing a more sustainable and inclusive world. Margaret, up to you.
Thanks, Jean. And thanks to everybody in the audience for participating. This marks the end of our time together. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for being here, for showing your interest in IDRC's work. Merci de l'intérêt que vous portez au travail de CID.
Thank you for your interest with regard to IDRC's work.
Continue to demonstrate, as you've heard, the tremendous commitment and agility through an incredibly unpredictable and fast evolving landscape. So thank you all for your dedication. And thank you to our three presenters for sharing exciting details about just three of IDRC's projects, initiatives, and the results that we're beginning to achieve and see under the first year strategy 2030. So je veux remercier de vous être joints à nous pour l'Assemblée publique annuelle de CIDI. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for
joining us today for our annual public meeting. And with that, I'll wish you goodbye and au revoir, and thanks again until next year.